Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to this Artnovion webinar hosted by Audio Technica. Apologies for the late start. We've just had a couple of technical issues, which we have now hopefully resolved, and everyone can see and hear me. Hopefully it's as nice where you are as it is in Leeds. It's absolutely beautiful here today, and hope everyone is well, not getting too fed up being at home just at the moment. For anyone that doesn't know, my name's Tom Macklin. I'm the area sales manager for the north of England and Scotland for Audio Technica. And today we are here to talk to you, or I'm here to introduce you to the guys from Artnovion, who are specialists in acoustic treatment. It's a fantastic brand. These guys are very, very passionate. They really know what they're talking about. They make highly efficient products. They look really, really nice. So everyone's microphone should be on mute. As we go through the presentation, if anybody has any questions at all, please write them in the box, which is probably on the right hand side of your screen, and we will get to those at the end. We will endeavour to answer everything. We are recording this presentation, so if anyone would like a copy, just drop me an email, send me a message on LinkedIn. I will post a link up there anyway, whether it's for you or for your colleagues. And so without further ado, I would like to hand you over to George, who is the CEO and founder of Artnovion, who is going to introduce you to his team and then take you through the presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi to everyone.
Hey, George.
How are you doing? Thank you for coming. What I'm trying to do today is just talk about acoustics for one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest issues in the future right now, which is office. So how can we come together to work together, and how can we improve that type of environment? So I have with me my team, Nat, which is running the R&D department, and we are doing a few curious things for the future regarding office. And I have Peter, which belongs to the project department too. So we invite these people because I invite this team because it's important. It's a big question what we are doing for the future related to this. Not only in acoustic, but everything goes around. I think this is a really important subject for the next, I think, months or years. I introduced you to Nat Bailey, which is, you notice it has a good British accent, so it's good. He plays at home. So, and then you have Pedro Pinto, also speaks fluent English. So, Nat, how are you doing?
So, hello there. So, as George said, we're in between the three of us. We hope to give you, a good presentation on acoustics and office acoustics. During the presentation, we're going to be giving you some brief training on how acoustic works, giving you some basic acoustic terminology, and then we're going to be going into types of office space and general functionality, common acoustic issues, and how best to solve. Okay, so if any of you have any questions throughout the presentation, as Tom said, please write them in and we'll make sure to address them all after we've gone through the presentation. So if you just go back, so if we start off with like general office design, I'm sure some of you are about to learn about how to design office acoustics, and others of you may work in a bad office space and looking how to improve it. But either way, I'm sure you know what we're going to be talking about, and I'm sure you've all experienced and aware of these phenomena. There's a lot of material and training on like the spatial functionality and the location of elements in an office. You can go into group dynamics and efficiency studies, and there is a whole school on like the visual side, from lighting design and the general awareness and attentiveness to color schemes and how they affect our emotions. And then you can always go to the basic essentials like comforts and heating and ventilation. You know, no one would think about making an open office space without windows or without heating or without airflow. I mean, you wouldn't probably die working in a space like that, but you wouldn't work at peak efficiency. And it's pretty much the same with acoustics. Open plan offices are like the go-to solution. They boost collaboration and communication between teams. And it does, you know, I work in one myself, and it does boost performance and creativity, but it does have some downsides. You know, if anything that requires privacy or focused work is open to stimulus from the general environment. You know, we see it a lot, like in the images here. You have a great space, it's open plan, you have large windows, a sleek wooden floor, no clutter anywhere, but it's impossible to work there. Like every sound is magnified. It's hard to concentrate or communicate, and that goes completely against the whole idea of working in a large open office. And it seems there's a general void when it comes to acoustics in office design, when it should be there right at the beginning, along with, you know, the heating and the lighting. You know, in terms of performance, I don't really want to start by throwing numbers at you like this, but there's a well-known statistic that if you're working in a noisy open office, you're distracted about once every 15 minutes. And it can take up to 20 minutes to fully concentrate and immerse yourself in the work again. So we spend more time with our brain focused, not on what we're doing, but on trying to focus and then reconcentrate on what we're doing. And this means, you know, less performance, less efficiency. But it's more important than just efficiency figures. It's about our health, because we're not working at good performance. As soon as we have to work faster, we have to speed up. And then to make up for this lost time, we have to multitask, we have to cut corners, and this leads to higher stress levels. It affects our well-being and our health. So the big question, and what we're going to be going into in this presentation, is how can companies create productive, creative environments without slowly killing our workers? So, first off, we can go through some basic acoustic training. We quantify sound using decibels, dBs. It's a logarithmic scale, so in psychoacoustic terms, a 10 dB increase is equivalent to double the perceived volume. So we can see a car horn is 4 times as loud as a lawnmower. It's a simple scale. And if we go on to general speech, a normal conversation in a closed space takes place from 60 to 80 dBs. So it's important to point out here that the perception of sound varies from person to person. Some of us are more sensitive to just sudden or loud noises, and some of us can't concentrate in a very noisy environment. But the thing our brain dislikes the most is sudden contrast. It spikes adrenaline levels, it puts us into like flight or fight mode. Sudden differences. I'll give you an example. If you're in noisy traffic and you hear a siren in the distance, you know it's there, but it doesn't actually make you startle. It's designed not to. But now imagine a phone going off in a library, or even a whisper in a library. It's very disturbing. You can have the same difference in decibels, but it's a completely different perception based on the general background noise. And this is a very interesting phenomenon that we'll go into more later. So, sound propagation. The sound propagation shows us how sound actually travels. Put simply, you have a pressure wave created by displaced air, which interacts with local air particles and forces them to move. You can see the animation there. These move and hit other particles, and so on. Each time they interact, they're going to lose a bit of energy. So over large distances, you have sound decay, which makes sense. And if they encounter a barrier, they'll interact with this and pass on energy to that surface. So these moving air particles move in cycles. They hit the particle in front of them, they rebound and hit the particle behind them, and then they pass by where they started and carry on the cycle. The time it takes to complete a cycle is measured in hertz, which is cycles per second. The faster a particle completes a cycle, the higher the frequency. So humans can hear from 20 to 20,000 hertz. If you've worked in sound for a while, as we have, it's probably more like 20 to 16 or 17,000 hertz, right, George?
Yes.
Anyway, going on, sound absorption. So sound absorption is when we have a material which removes energy from an incoming sound wave. This could be foam, it could be a thick fabric, anything that's basically porous with an open internal matrix. What we want is we want the sound wave to be able to enter this material and interact with this material and dissipate energy into this, which means there's less energy which is reflected back into the environment. So we want a material that has a low surface air resistance that basically allows the sound wave to interact with it freely. So the more porous, the better, and usually the thicker and denser, the better. But that depends a lot on the application and the type of space we're trying to treat. So below we have sound deflection. This is what happens basically when a sound wave hits a surface. The harder and smoother the surface, the more pronounced this reflection is going to be. Imagine something like tile or glass. They're very reflective materials, which means you're going to have more energy that's reflected back into the room, which is usually a bad thing. We usually want to diminish this effect as much as possible, as we'll see in a bit. So transmission is the degree that a material allows sound to propagate through it. A lot of spaces require privacy, especially in an office, and that means you need good soundproofing. And this is not just about choosing the right materials, but the right construction method. It's usually quite tricky to create a well soundproof environment after the construction phase, because it's about how the building is built and the sort of materials that you use in building it. So, as we spoke earlier, high reflective surfaces are bad. They reflect more energy into a room. So let's look at some issues we have in a space without acoustic treatment. So sound is emitted here by our source, which is the lady on the left. Now, all of this process is going to happen very fast. So the sound is going to travel pretty much omnidirectionally in space. Part of it is going to hit the listener straight away. Part of it is going to interact with the room. The more reflective the surface is, the more energy is sent back into the room. And the more time, sound can ping around off these surfaces before it eventually reaches the listener. Now, as I said, this happens very, very fast, faster than our brain can register. We perceive all of these sounds as just one single sound. So we have the clean, direct sound, and then all of these muddied reflections. And this leads to bad speech intelligibility. We can't hear clearly what people are saying. It's all noise, basically. So this would be a space with a high reverberation time. If it's a very large space or a very reflective space, and if these sounds bounce around in there for more than 80 milliseconds, that means we actually perceive them as two different sounds. In an exaggerated effect, we call this an echo. So, with acoustic treatment, looking at the same space, we've basically eliminated the nasty reflections we had before. Now we only perceive the direct sound. So it takes less mental effort at the end of the day to decipher communication. It lowers the general noise floor, it improves the acoustic ambience. A low noise floor also makes us feel more relaxed, more focused. It helps us concentrate. So that's like the basics on how acoustic treatment works. If you're looking at a workplace, there's many different noises. There's going to be the coffee machine in the background, there may be some traffic noise outside, but the coffee machine is going to be gurgling away at about 200 hertz, more or less. The traffic outside is going to be 40, 50 hertz. The main problem we have in an office is voice. Why is this? It's because we're essentially social animals. We crave interaction and communication. Our brain is programmed to be extra sensitive in the frequency range of speech. You've all experienced this. It's much easier to distinguish a faint voice in the background than other faint sounds that may get going on with the same intensity. So it makes sense to direct our treatment. There's no point using massive low frequency treatment, and it won't be enough just putting some blinds and wallpaper in the space that only work on like 8,000 hertz upwards. The treatment needs to work at the right frequency. So most of our products, as you'll see, are tuned to work exactly in this frequency range. So the products work where they need to work. Now, where do we place them? So if you see the images with our projects, first off, let me say this. So just go back a slide there. So I know design is always going to come first. Unless you're working in an absolute bunker, acoustics has got to be functional. It's got to be in line with the design of the space. But we also need to place acoustic treatment in strategic locations. I mean, we're not just going to fill the whole room with acoustic treatment panels. And with the performance our products have, we really just don't need to. We need to think which of the critical surfaces we're going to use. Two people working close together in a huge open office won't get any benefits by treating a wall that's 20 feet away. When they talk, sounds will reflect to the closest surfaces to them. They're going to be the main contributing surfaces. In this case, usually it's going to be the floor and the ceiling. Seeing as floors usually have things like furniture and tables and rugs and other people, they do a pretty good job of breaking up these reflections. So we really just need to place the panels on the ceiling. Another good example is, we like to call it the meeting box. You know, they have them all over the place now. It's a squarish room, all the sides in glass, or mostly glass. Now these rooms are awful. They're like the bane of meetings, and we're constantly getting into fights with architects over these. I mean, there's a bit of a tendency towards these rooms, but they're awful. They have strong reflections coming from all the walls at once. So you have large, flat, reflective glass surfaces in the meeting room, and the acoustics in there is impossible. But seeing as the walls are parallel, it's almost like standing in between two mirrors. You know, you have infinite number of reflections in between those walls until the sound dies out. So in those cases, we're always going to be treating a wall to control the reflections in the room.
If you look to the conference room, it's exactly the same, because sometimes it's about the distance. Sometimes you have the person at the edge of the table try to speak to the other person at the other edge of the table, and the reflection and the delays and the decay time actually getting harder and harder to understand. And also if you have like a webinar or a Skype, the sound starts to mixing, and all the problems, you know, digital problems you usually have on this communication. So if you have acoustic treatment sorted, you start to see there's less noise around. It's only the source are actually the right level to do the communication. So this is a good example. You see what does affect the sound field or the conference room.
Sorry, I'll go to this. The work cafe, but this is like all the Starbucks of the world or something like that. So, or if you have good taste, another coffee place. But we see more of these places coming up now because people are trying to run away almost from their open office spaces. So earlier on, we talked about, you know, noise levels and sudden changes in noise level, and this is quite important here. So we feel comfortable when we're surrounded by a steady noise floor. That's why lots of people choose to work in this sort of, you know, cafe, coffee shop place. It feeds our brain with just enough information to keep it happy, so we can concentrate on the task at hand. And there are also some interesting studies on working in like a community and consciously competing with the people around us. So it gives us a boost, basically. It breaks up our routine, and we don't working in a constantly shifting environment. But either way, the noise level in here is critical. So it's almost like the Goldilocks noise level. It can't be too quiet because then we start losing privacy, and it can't be too loud because then we can't concentrate. So we need a steady, like even noise floor of around 70 dB for this sort of space to work. So acoustic treatment in this space is going to be that. It's going to be to create a nice even noise floor around it. So we're going to use some absorption walls and ceilings and try and create a nice uniform environment with quite a bit of privacy in between people.
Yeah, thank you. That's true. And also, if you see that graph on the bottom of this presentation, you start to see the sound of the table on the left mixing with the sound of the table on the right, and that's raise the level and mix the sound. If you look the space actually with acoustic treatment, so that means, you know, your conversation stays on the point where you stay, not going through the room. So that makes actually more comfortable to talk, and you don't really need to talk loud. It's like you go to the cinema, and you know, there's a lot of acoustic treatment on the cinema. You speak really, I would say, quieter compared to if you go to the cafe. So also the acoustics affect the behavior, the people behavior, how they speak and how they talk. So that's really, really, really important. And of course, at the end of the day, as less exposed you are to noise, as less stress you feel, and that is a matter of health, your health also true. So that is where a lot of problems comes, and a lot of we've been receiving more and more people asking for acoustic treatment for open office. It's a nightmare working in the space that everybody's talking. Sometimes I'm talking about one floor, almost 50 people to 60 to 100 people talking the same floor with a large office, and then can imagine that environment without any acoustics. So it will be a nightmare to be there, answer the phone, people talking, all these aspects. And actually, acoustics, it's the main key to make that big office, open office, actually working well. So that is the key to do that. Of course, today or nowadays, the way we are living regarding towards to the future, of course, that open office will be a little bit different. I think that we've been seeing like 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago before the pandemic. So this is things we are thinking about, and social distance, and how can we create acoustics with protection for people, and that is one of the subjects we will like to also go through and are talking about more. So, and then if you have another type of open office, different configuration, is actually the same, so a bit smaller, but you start to see the focus of different people working, start to mix with other people, and then we have acoustic treatment. Actually, it's easy to just the center of the conversation will be just close to the desk, not really spread through the room. Let's look to how can we solve these problems. So there's a big question, because if you use too much material, how much material you should use, what type of material you should use on this case, and people are sometimes say, why I should use one type of material, why I use these, I need to fulfill all the ceiling. If I need to use that, I just need a small square panel, and there's a lot of confusion, because I think we may need some clarification regarding how to use acoustic treatment on that kind of space.
So there's acoustic treatments which are dedicated panels for this sort of function. There are also what we like to call acoustic elements. So a heavy curtain or a bookcase will be an acoustic element, and it will help either absorb or break up sound waves in the space. But these are going to be very localized. You don't usually have acoustic elements on the ceiling, and the ceiling is often the most important place to put a treatment. So there are various different tools we can use in terms of acoustic treatments. They have the fabric absorbers, which are mid-high frequency absorbers, and then tuned mid-range absorbers that we spoke about earlier, tuned to the speech range. What you have there is a small graph showing you how these products work in terms of performance. So the red line will be a typical wooden, perforated absorber, which is tuned to work at about 4,000 hertz. And then the green would be a typical fabric absorber, which is fabric and foam, which works on mid-high frequencies. So depending on the efficiency, we will use different quantities of these panels. So if you have a very efficient panel, if it absorbs around 0.7, 0.1, this is basically percentage of energy that is not reflected. So in this graph, 0 would be the wall of a bunker, the massive concrete structure that reflects all of the energy that hits it. 1 would be the equivalent of an open window. So it's a black hole, nothing is reflected from it. So if you have a highly efficient product, you don't need to use as much as many, it's quite simple. So usually in offices, we keep to ceilings, because people don't want to either see panels, or they already have all their surfaces occupied. Square meters in an office is critical, costs are critical. So if we're just using ceiling, usually covering 30 to 40% of the ceiling is enough. Now, we want to localize this treatment on the ceiling. We want to put it around collaboration desks, around workers. We want to avoid the aggressive floor ceiling reflections where people work at their workstations. If we can also distribute this around walls, we'd cover about 20, 30% of the whole area. But it's critical which products you're actually using. So if you use a less efficient product, as we can see next, 04 to 06, you're going to need more of it. Now, if you're just using the ceiling, covering 60% of a ceiling, it may be what the space needs, but I doubt the designers of the space are going to allow you to cover that much of a surface. So we need to pick products very carefully and always try and use as less as possible in the space. So again, if you're looking at wallpaper, some thick wallpapers will be around 0.1% of 0.1 absorption. So yeah, you would need to cover the entire walls and ceiling of the space to have any difference. And the problem about thin absorbers like wallpaper or blinds or certain curtains is they only work on very high frequencies. They won't be working at the mid frequency range that we need for voice. So this, as I was saying earlier, where the treatment should go. There's a few obvious examples here of easy places to direct treatment. And then we can go on to, showing some actual examples. So we use a lot of what we call clouds or baffles in these spaces. Now, why is this? If you imagine this panel is suspended from the ceiling by about 1 meter. So if you imagine this panel directly on the surface of the ceiling, the absorption area of the panel is the same area as the panel. But when we move this further away from the surface, the panel ends up having a lot larger shadow projected onto the ceiling. So it's going to pick up a lot more sound waves from a lot of different angles. So this boosts performance a lot, not to mention that sound is going to pass through the panel, hit the surface, rebound, and they pass through the panel again. So it's a very effective and efficient way of placing absorption material in an office. It means, again, with less material, you can have more effect, which is always good. And then when we're going, that's an example for ceiling treatment. If we're looking at wall treatments, we have to be quite careful usually in what we use in terms of design. So we have one of our acoustic artwork panels there, which is a high resolution printable panel that is usually quite an acceptable solution to use in an office space. So a few more examples here. I like the large Audio Technica logo down there. That's good brand placement. So we have some of our wall-to-wall solutions here. So this is like a continuous finish, I would say, throughout all of the acoustic panel. This is a dedicated conference room, if I'm not mistaken, but Peter can confirm. So there was suspended microphones around the place. It was used for, it was a mixed purpose room, so you had people joining through Skypes and webinars. So it was critical to get a lot of, not just absorption, but also some sound diffusion to create a more uniform sound environment in there. So everybody around the table could be heard in exactly the same level of intensity, I would say. So some of these spaces, even though it's just an office, they have some quite steep acoustic requirements. And then we see another example here of ceiling treatment. So this is just the standard. This isn't so much in Europe, I would say, but in America, every office has a ceiling tile grid. You have the standard perforated or flat plaster tiles. So this is a very simple product. It just directly replaces these tiles with, this is a printed PET panel, so 100% absorbance, mid-high frequency absorption, and it's usually a way to do a good significant acoustic treatment with minimum disruption to the space. It's just simply swapping the existing tiles with these. Now you may say, oh, but my tiles are acoustic tiles, they're micro-perforated, whatever it is. They're different products. So if you look at a standard perforated ceiling tile, look at the performance range and see exactly where it works and compare that with the performance range of one of these and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, we are going through a few examples, acoustic treatment, the way you put like in cafes, entrance levels. This is a few images that can show you where can create and imagine how can we use the acoustic tiles. I think we need to be creative and sometimes to also work with architects. So the idea of Artnovion is not just make acoustic treatments. It looks awful. Just really something actually looks also fantastic. This is some ideas, some the way we can different ways and different types of works. To give you an idea of what we can do from screens, from acoustic panels, for the project we can help. But of course, now is more important than actually we are talking. I think it's you guys making some questions, curiosity about things. Pedro is here from our design team, and Nat, of course, is there, and me as acoustician. Please, I'm open. Tom, you can lead that.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, guys, for that presentation. There was really interesting noise going on in the last minute or so.
Sorry, that was me, yes.
So firstly, just apologies, because I've got a feeling that everyone missed about the first minute and a half of this webinar, which included my introduction, where I actually introduced the guys from Artnovion. So you were it was Nat and George and Pedro doing the talking. George is the CEO and founder of Artnovion, and my name's Tom. I am the area sales manager for Audio Technica in the UK. We are the distributor. In the UK, we also distribute Artnovion in Benelux and in Spain. So I also covered, if anyone's got any questions, please write them in the box on the right-hand side. So we have some questions coming in. So the first one, could you briefly cover why you might specify a diffuser panel as well, or instead of just a load of absorbers?
I can jump in. It's always a balance between absorption and diffusion. So we are not talking in the studio for music, and actually diffuser, helps a lot in terms of sound, in terms of music, to create a nice environment. Also does happen, and does helps the voice too. But normally, because this type of space is a price per meter square, if you are willing to spend the money for diffusers in this space, for that is nice, but it costs a lot. So this is why we have on our line, we call layer panel, which is the perforated panel. I can go through quickly, and I put this in my presentation. You still see my screen, I think. So
Yes,
this is that is the product. That is the product. Actually, we tune for the absorption coefficient as we can tune the perforation, but also is the diffuser at the same time. So we just took the technique being used for studios, and we work out the idea to put on office. To have that kind of feeling, you are not only buying an absorber but also diffuse at the same time. But that does it is important. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of also the costs. But yeah, well, that's.
If I can jump in here, so putting it very simply, an absorber is going to remove energy from a space, and a diffuser is going to spread energy around a space. So in an environment where speech intelligibility is critical, we sometimes use diffusion there to create more of a homogeneous sound field throughout the space. So they're different tools, and in some spaces we need to use them. If we're looking at just an open office where noise control and reflections is critical, we'd only use absorption there. So only when you need to work mainly on speech would we use diffusion in this sort of space. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much for that. A practical question, are your panels available for ease?
We don't have them directly database for ease. We can export that though, definitely, and we can send that on.
We have a database for Audion. We use normal Audion, but this I think it's the same. Well, what you could do in an Excel file, we can send you the awesome coefficient, and that it will be easy to just import to easy. But we can send you an Excel file with all the absorption coefficients with the name. But I think it's will be not a problem. I think it's a matter of converting. I think database, but yeah, we all the absorption coefficient if you need to.
So sorry, just to clarify, is that's something that you could share with us now that I could then?
Yeah, we can share. We can send you this next week. I think Monday or something with the consolidated database with some products. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So, what do you recommend for a small home office environment? Obviously, I think most of us are finding ourselves working in these spaces at the moment. Less open plan, more one man in a box.
Yeah, it's a good question, because we are today launching a kit. We call this a mobile wall kit for like home, stay home, stay safe. And because sometimes people have their own private homes and small rooms, so they don't do stick panels on the walls or something like that. So we create a mobile stand that can actually fast creating a kind of small environment when people can actually work easily. We do webinars and treat the room to make sure that a typical home can be creating an acoustic environment. And of course, even for small rooms, we have nice panels like fabric finish panels that's easy to install on the walls. And just a few of them, as we showed before on our presentation. So they are really high efficient panels. So we don't really need to cover a full wall with acoustic treatment, just a few surface, and you get your room done. So that's I think something easy for acoustics, like a company like Artnovion.
So I'd say placement here is critical, because if it's a mobile solution and you place that closer to yourself, again, you're having more of a shadow effect on the rest of the room. So using a small number of panels strategically around this place is usually enough. But there are other problems, in home offices. I mean, like you heard during the end of the presentation, my neighbor started drilling through the wall. There are some things and some issues that you do need more panels to correct. So it depends, what sort of level you're aiming to achieve with your environment. It's never going to be perfect, but it can definitely be greatly improved.
Do you have any sort of rule of thumb of a percentage of wall/ceiling coverage?
Yep, we saw that in the presentation, and if you're using only ceiling, it's around 30%. If you're using walls and ceiling, 20 to 30%.
Okay. And I guess
if you're using localized mobile walls, you just need enough to create a sort of safe area around you, I'd say.
And for a home office environment, something like the Myriad panel
that would be great. Yes,
be a great place to start.
Yes, it's self-adhesive. It's very easy to use. You just peel off the backing and arrange that, in between parallel walls, on the opposite walls to windows, avoiding, of course, ceiling floor reflections too as much as possible. Although in a home, it's usually better to use the furniture you have, use a thick carpet and that sort of thing to avoid ceiling reflections. So there we go. There's a good example there that you see of how to arrange absorbers. So this is creating a nice quiet environment around the desk. It's avoiding parallel reflections to the front wall and the back wall, and also the specular reflections you get from that corner, between the floor and the wall. So this is a good example of how to have a vastly improved home office setup.
Yeah, and let me just jump in that for a second. I would just like to say that for this type of application, for the mobile wall kits that we are just launching, these are very good solutions for home offices, as we were talking about, because they are not invasive into space. So you don't have to screw anything on the walls, you don't have to glue anything on the walls, just some portable solution, and it can be easily detached and moved to anywhere that you probably want to take the panels after your home working or something like that. So it's just a really versatile solution when you're in your living room or in your home space where you don't want something to be permanent, and we're trying to give you that option with this type of solution.
So I've got another, I've got a question here about the finish of panels and the various colors that are available. Are all panels available in all colors?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, basically, yeah, we have a large range of different finishes. We can, do customized finishes on request, but we have a very large range of different finishes, both in, wood finishes, lacquered finishes, fabric finishes, combinations of those.
I think probably best with that is if you go to artnovion.com, you can find any of the panels and all of the available finishes that are
definitely
for each of those panels.
Well, that I just switched again for another home office, and you can actually create a small environment that surrounds you, easy to set up, different colors too. So just to give you an idea, how can we do this? So from a typical living room, a private room, and you can create different environments and create different setups to make sure that you have exactly what you need or adapt at home. Yeah, Tom.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And obviously, I mean, the advantage of that is that you're not having to install anything onto the walls.
Yeah.
These are then movable. Can any of your products be used to project onto?
Well, we have played around with this beforehand using a white fabric, sheer white fabric panel, but it doesn't replace the screen. It really doesn't. It can be used in an emergency, as we did at the time. But I would say either if you're going with the wood finish, you have a lot of gain from the finish itself. It's very reflective, and if you're going with the fabric, it's always going to absorb some of that light. So I'm not saying you can't in the sense that you can project onto anything, but I don't think it would be ideal.
Okay. A question on the fixings. Do all the panels have the same fixing?
So the panels we are launching for this office range, the mobile solutions, they all have the same fixing. So the panels are usually, by standard, they're equipped with screw-thread receivers on the back of the panel. So you just simply screw in the clips, the threaded bar screw into the back of the panels. You don't need any power tools to do this. It's just a question of screwing in the clips, and then these clip to a tube system which is attached to a base. So it's very simple.
And then, so what about panels that are fixing to the walls?
So it's actually inspired on the same system, I would say. So if the standard way we'd fix panels to walls, I mean, of course, we have panels like Myriad, which are self-adhesive, which are very simple. But standard panels, we'd use the same inspired tube system for the wall. So basically, you just draw a line along the wall, and you put the clips along that line. Then you clip in the tube to the clips, and then you clip in the panels to the tube. At the end of the day, you need to put in about, I would say, 6 holes in the wall for every 2 panels. So it's very light. It's very, if you're in a rented property, it's very easy to fit in 6 holes in the wall afterwards.
So we can see a slide here.
So it shows how all the panels are not just easy to install, but also easy to remove. If you need to take them off for maintenance, if you change house in the future, you can remove all the panels and reinstall them without damaging the panels in any way.
Okay, that's great.
For more information on all of the fixing systems, if you just check out our website, you have the fixing systems tab there, along with all the panels and all the information you need about the panels.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. And obviously, you've given some tips or hints and tips today about what panels to use and how many panels might be used. Can you offer any support ongoing with projects?
I think Pedro should answer this one.
Yes, we have a dedicated project support team that you can contact, and you can basically we can help you design a room acoustics from scratch. If you need any help with a certain room, whether it is an open office or home office or a studio or whatever, you just send an email at techdesign@artnovion.com. And if you send over the details of the room, the dimensions, and where the windows are and how large they are, doors that you have there, furniture, and all of that information, if we can have access to that, we can then build a SketchUp of the room, a 3D SketchUp like the ones you see right now on the presentation. And from that, we can arrange a design and basically let you know what panels to use, where to put them, how many of them, and the expected improvement that you'll be getting from that treatment.
Okay,
so also on the website itself, if you can show, there's a link you can follow where you can submit, all the information to fill your room. Just wait for that to come up. Okay.
So customer service, and you can project support and request form. Then you have all the information. You can fill that form easy to do. So if it is too complicated, landing page, it just project support. It's much faster. So and that's
any questions about submitting projects, just get in touch with Tom here, and he can guide you through it all.
Absolutely.
And if you have wanted to understand a little bit more about acoustics, we have all data, educational database. We have a new line with med line with antibacterial materials and everything. So low frequency. So there's a few things that you can actually understand a little bit about space, acoustics, and how can we do it. So yeah, it's fine, to make questions and reading a little bit more. So let us know what you need. We are happy to support.
Fantastic. So we've got no more questions coming just now. If anyone thinks of anything, then please drop me an email. You can contact me or any of the guys from Artnovion on LinkedIn directly. If you need any information on stock availability, pricing, etc., you can just drop me a line. And I think that just leaves me to say thank you very much again for joining us. Apologies to anyone who missed the first minute or so of the presentation. You didn't miss anything important. It was just me rattling on.
The best bit.
If any of you guys over in Portugal would like to just turn your cameras on and just give us a wave, I'm sure everyone would love to say hello. So this is George. Hi, George.
Hello there.
Hey, Pedro.
Hi, guys.
I'll stay hidden.
Nat's a bit of a shy guy.
Yeah.
So we've just got some thanks coming in the question box. You are very, very welcome. Yes, I shall share a link to the webinar. I will send it out to all the attendees, and I will put it on LinkedIn. Obviously, feel free to share it. We do hope to have more Artnovion webinars in the future on different topics. Obviously, this one was focused mainly on offices. There are all sorts of different environments where Artnovion can be used. So keep an eye out for that. We'll share on social media in the future. Once again, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a lovely weekend. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.